Hello children, welcome to the digital session. In today's session, we are going to work with reading comprehension. The objectives of the session are to enable the learners to know the process of reading, to enable them to know the skills involved in reading, and to enable them to appreciate poetry. Dear children, reading is a regular activity in our life. We read so many kinds of texts. We read stories, we read comics, we read newspaper, we read novels, and so on. Okay, let's have a glance at the text that we read in our daily life. We can categorize the text into non-verbal and verbal. Non-verbal texts comprise pictures and images, and the examples are pictures, posters, images, tables, graphs, diagrams, and cartoons. Whereas verbal texts are stories, news reports, narratives, essays, plays or drama scripts, letters, messages, notices, biographies, poems, conversations, descriptions, diary entries, invitations, and profiles. A big question is, what is reading and what do we do while reading? Well, we can say that reading is getting information from the written text or visual, as well as reading is interacting with the texts and meaning making. Okay, the purpose of reading is clear here. We read to get meaning from the text, but at the basic or at the initial level, we read for pronunciation. So we can say that reading involves both pronunciation at the basic level and comprehension at a higher level. So what do we mean to say that reading for pronunciation? In this process, we try to relate letters and sounds, and we identify the sound patterns, and we convert the written text into oral form. Whereas reading for comprehension is very important at this level. What do we do here? So reading for comprehension can be said as the ability to process the text, understand its meaning, and relate it with what we already know. What do we mean by processing the texts? Processing the text involves getting the main idea or theme. The type of text means what type of text? Is it a story or a description or a conversation or a biography or a profile or even a letter? And familiarizing the text involves we try to apply our previous knowledge with the text that we read. And understanding the text involves getting the overall information and getting the specific information and meanings of unfamiliar words in context, and inferring and understanding the reference. These are the steps involved in reading for comprehension. Understanding the text involves predicting, identifying the sequence of sentences, evaluating, and critical understanding and text organization. How the events or incidents are organized in the text. Here we are going to identify two types of texts. One is familiar text and unfamiliar or independent text. What do we mean by familiar text? They are the texts that we have come across already. Maybe the lessons from your textbook or stories that we know or something that we already read before. And whereas independent or unfamiliar text means the text that we are facing first time in our life. And the basic difference is when you are working with a familiar text, we have a chance to apply our previous knowledge. While reading a story like The Thirsty Crow, we can apply our knowledge, and we already know the story before. It is an example for familiar text. But when we come across a text, maybe the solar system, maybe the space shuttles, maybe we have not come across such a text before in our life. So there is very little scope to apply our previous knowledge. Here is an example for this. So if you see this text, it is very easy to read and it's very easy to understand. So at a glance we can say this text has all the letters of the English alphabet and they are in proper sequence even. You can say A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. Even we need not read from the first letter till the last letter. At a very first glance, we can say, okay, even you can read the text with your eyes closed and we will get the information. Okay, these are the letters of the English alphabet. Very easy, they are in the proper sequence. Let's have a glance at the second text. It is not as easy as the first one. Of course, it has the same letters, but the sequence is in the reverse order. So we need to pay more attention to read. It begins with Z and ends with A. So if you make a comparison between text 1 and text 2 is not as easy as text 1. And have a glance at text 3. This is the tough one. The same letters it has, but the sequence is totally different. It is neither in the proper sequence nor in the reverse sequence. So you can say A, which is followed by Z, and B followed by Y, and C followed by X. So we need to pay more attention to read such a text. So dear children, this is an example how we work with a familiar text and how we work with an independent text. In this session, we are going to work with an independent text. I mean to say the text we have not seen before. The earth is composed of many layers which are called spheres. The solid earth is composed of a thin layer, the crust. Beneath it, we can find a thick rocky layer, the mantle. The two layers together are called lithosphere. The earth is covered with water and ice, which is called hydrosphere. The earth is surrounded by air, which is called atmosphere. Dear children, when we read the text, we will get the basic information or the main idea. What is the text mainly about? And while reading, we identify the main points and some specific terms. Shall we attempt comprehension? The text is mainly about the formation of the earth, the parts of the earth, the composition of the earth, and the quantity of the earth. We are given 4 options here, and we can go back to the text here. If we read the text, it is very clear that the passage is mainly about the formation of the earth. So, for this question, option C will be the correct one. And here is another test item. Water and ice are associated with hydrosphere, lithosphere, atmosphere, and hemisphere. Here we are looking for specific information. Water and ice are associated with. To answer this question, we can go back to the text once again. Here it is. The earth is covered with water and ice, which is called hydrosphere. So we are looking for specific information and we have got the answer. For this test item, the answer is hydrosphere. Next, the word composed in the passage means covered, formed from many things, mixed, collected. Here we are attempting to get the meaning of a particular word in context, and we have not come across the word composed before. So this time we will have to guess. We can go back to the text, and the very first sentence tells us about the composition of the earth. So we can get the meaning of the word composed, which means formed from many things. Dear children, just we have seen the test items, and each test item focuses on a particular skill. Now, here are a few questions. To answer these questions, we have to use our previous knowledge and we have to get our opinion, and these test items are quite open-ended. What are found in lithosphere? It is not clearly stated. Even if you go back to the text, we won't find anything that clearly tells us about lithosphere. This question cannot be answered directly. Rather, we have to read the text once again. What makes lithosphere? It is not clearly stated at any point. Rather, we will have to understand. Lithosphere is made of crust and mantle. Although it is not given specifically, we will have to infer. Inferring means getting the information between the lines. This information is not given at any point. Rather, we will have to infer. After reading the text, we will come to the conclusion that lithosphere is associated with the two layers of the earth, which are the crust as well as the mantle. And see this test item. How does global warming affect the spheres of the earth? This information is not at all given in the text. Rather, we will have to go for critical comprehension. We have to apply our knowledge, we have to draw conclusions, we have to state reasons, and we will have to give our own answer in our own words. It is quite independent. And for this question, you can have n number of correct answers. It is not just 1 to 1. You can have n number of right answers depending on the level of comprehension, depending on the way the reader thinks about it. Dear children, we have come across this text which is independent, and we have attempted comprehension. Here is another passage. Let us attempt comprehension. The word pencil comes from the Latin pensillum, meaning a little tail. About 1600 years ago, the discovery of graphite led to the use of wooden pencils. Today, pencils are made of powdered graphite and clay moistened into paste, then forced out of holes in a cylinder. They are then baked hard. Narrow grooves are cut in thin boards of wood and the leads are laid in them. A cutting machine divides them into individual pencils, ready for smoothing and finishing. Shall we attempt comprehension now? The great change in making pencils was. So if you get back to the passage, we will find what brought great change in making pencils. It is very clear, the discovery of graphite, which is given in the third line. So we have got this specific information at a particular point in the passage. A cutting machine divides them into individual pencils. So the word them refers to, it is called reference. If you get back to the text, we'll have to read the total sentence and we'll have to identify what does the word them refer to. Thin boards of wood. So this is what we call referring. And the final stage in making pencils is, again we can go back to the text, we'll get the answer. The final stage is smoothing and finishing. Dear children, so far we have worked with independent passages. Now we are going to work with poetry. And what makes poetry unique? And what are the features of poetry? So on seeing a poem, we'll identify many properties of a poem, and we'll find out the central idea, we'll find out the theme and sub-themes, we'll find out tone, mood, and even rhythm. At the initial level, the focus is always on rhythm. We'll try to identify the music in poetry. That's why in our childhood days, we learned so many rhymes and poems that have plenty of music in them. But when we come to higher level, we'll have to look into the other aspects of poetry, the theme and sub-themes, and even the imagery and the figurative use of language, and so on. So what does imagery mean? While reading a poem, what images come to our mind? and what pictures are associated with a particular poem. Figurative use of language involves figures of speech, simile, metaphor, personification, hyperbole, and so on, and appreciation, getting the overall information of the poem and how the poem appeals to us. And here are a few figures of speech. The first one is simile. A simile is comparison between two things that have similar qualities. The examples are Usha runs like a cheetah and Ramesh is as brave as a lion. In these examples we will find Usha and cheetah share the same quality, fastness, whereas Ramesh and lion share the same quality, bravery. So we have attempted a comparison which can be said simile. So in simile we will find like and as. And the other figures of speech is metaphor. Metaphor is nothing but it's a type of simile, whereas the comparison is implied between two things that are different from each other but have similarities. The basic difference between simile and metaphor is we don't use words like or as in a metaphor, whereas we use them in simile. The examples are life is a race and he is the star of the class. If you want to change into simile, you can say life is like a race and he is like the star of the class. It becomes simile, but when the comparison is imposed, it becomes metaphor. The other figures of speech is personification, means attributing human qualities to non-human things. The examples are the roses raised their heads in joy. And generally roses are inhuman, but we are attributing the human quality raising heads. That's why the roses raised their heads in joy. And another example is I like books but they don't like me. Books have no life, but we have attributed human quality and we are saying I like books but they don't like me. And another figure of speech is hyperbole. It's an overstatement or exaggeration. Very far away from reality. This bag weighs a ton. A ton we know 1,000 kilos and no bag weighs a ton, but it is exaggeration. Similarly, I have told you 10,000 times. We never say anything 10,000 times, but this is a very common expression we use. I have told you 10,000 times. It's an example for hyperbole. And other figure of speech is apostrophe, addressing non-human things. It can be non-human or which is not present or even dead or even lifeless. The examples are 8, you are my lucky number. Mountain, why are you so tall? And another one is antithesis. The word anti tells two opposite things, and when we put two opposite things together, it is antithesis. The examples are speech is silver but silence is gold. Man proposes but God disposes. So two opposite things are put together, and this is an example for antithesis. Dear children, while working with a poem, we will have to look into the beauty of poetry, particularly the music, rhyme and figures of speech and the theme and sub-themes, the central idea, imagery, and how the poem appeals to us. Shall we attempt appreciation of poetry? How do you like to go up in a swing, up in the air so blue? Oh, I do think it the pleasantest thing ever a child can do. Up in the air and over the wall, till I can see so wide. Rivers and trees and cattle and all over the countryside. Till I look down on the garden green, down on the roof so brown. Up in the air I go flying again, up in the air and down. I hope you have enjoyed this poem. This poem really appeals to us. It gives us the experience when we go up in a swing and come down. And while reading the poem, we can feel as if we were moving in a swing. Shall we attempt comprehension for this poem? The word blue in the poem refers to the river, the garden, the sky and the swing. So if you read the very first line, how do you like to go up in a swing, up in the air so blue? So if you go up in the air, what can we see? We can see the sky. So the word blue refers to the sky. And the next one is, the word pleasantest in the poem refers to serious, sad, joyful or angry. If you get back to the poem, why do you think it the pleasantest thing ever a child can do? So the word pleasantest means joyful or very, very happy. Next one, when the child comes down, he can see the wide countryside, rivers, cattle, roofs of the house. If you go back to the poem, you can see, till I look down on the garden green, down on the roof so brown. So when the child comes down, he can see the roofs of the houses. And the color brown is associated with garden, rivers, sky and roofs. It is also very clear the color brown is associated with roofs. Here are a few questions. What would be the setting of the poem? So while reading the poem, what setting comes to our mind? Is it a city or village or a landscape in nature? So it's quite open in the test item, you can attempt it. And how would you feel when you go up in a swing? Imagine you are going up in a swing and how would you feel? And you can give our experiences or feelings. And here is another poem. Day by day I float my paper boats, one by one down the running stream. In big black letters I write my name on them and the name of the village where I live. I hope that someone in some strange land will find them and know who I am. I load my little boats with chilly flowers from our garden and hope that these blooms of the dawn will be carried safely to land in the night. So floating paper boats is a very common activity that every child does. Shall we attempt the appreciation? The word stream in the poem means river, sea, tank and ocean. So the very first line tells us, day by day I float my paper boats one by one down the running stream. So stream can be understood as moving water. So the possibility is only for river. So the answer river is correct for this test item. The mood of the speaker is he serious or joyful or angry or apathetic? It's very clear floating paper boats is a joyful activity and the mood is also joyful. And here are a few test items. What is the poem mainly about? The poem is mainly about the activity of the child, and the child is floating the paper boats and he is leaving them in water and he is decorating them. He is writing his name and the name of the village and he is expecting to have new friends. What is the poem mainly about? The poem is mainly about the activity of the child. The child is floating paper boats down the running stream. He has decorated them. If you see the next text item, why do you think the boy wrote his name and the name of his village on the paper boats? So we can say that the child wants to have new friends. The child wants others to know about him and about his village. So he has written his name and the name of his village on the paper boats and he has left the boats in the flowing water. And the next test item is, did you ever float paper boats? It's quite open-ended. Most of us must have enjoyed rainy season. Most of us have witnessed flowing water. And as children, we must have floated paper boats. It's a very common activity that every child does in the life. Such questions are easy to answer and we can give our opinion, we can go back to our childhood days, we can share our experiences and even we can tell about our joyful moments in our life. Dear children, in this session we have worked with textbook independent passages and we have attempted comprehension. We have come across the skills involved in reading comprehension. We have identified overall information and specific information. We have attempted to get the meaning of particular words in context. We have identified reference. And even we have worked with poetry and we have come across the features of poetry. and we have enjoyed the poems. That's all for us today. Have a nice day.